Welcome to Python Made Simple. But I'm not a singer. But anyway, welcome to this Python coding tutorial where you all can just code along with me and we can learn Python together. So in this video, we're going to be making another mini Python project. So before we made a savings calculator, we've made a Python quiz, and in this video, we're going to be making a random password generator. So I'm excited. So the website that we're using to write our Python code, so it's kind of like our Python editor is what you can consider it, is replit.com. So you actually have to log in to use this website. I usually log in through Google, but it's completely free and this is not sponsored at all. I just really like repl.it. So that is what we're going to be using. So then once you sign in, this is the screen that you will see, and it will allow you to actually write code, and the language you're using is Python. So the first thing that you want to do, we're going to be making that password generator, is come up with the algorithm. And an algorithm is just a step-by-step game plan that you have for your code. So for example, your algorithm will help solve a problem. And our problem is, how can we come up with a random password? So I actually wrote out the steps for the algorithm already. So let me just paste it here for you, and we can just quickly go over it before we write the code. But step one is we're going to get the length of the password from the user. So, at this step, we're going to, get some input from the user and say hey, how long do you want your password to be? So that's the very first step. And then we're going to get into the heart of our algorithm, where for each position up to the length of the password, what we want to do is come up with that random character. So I kind of drew this diagram because I think it might help. But let's say the user types in 5. So they want their password to be 5 characters long. What we're going to do is for each position, so just imagine at the beginning, we don't have anything for the user. We don't know what that password is going to be. But then for the very first position, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with that random letter. So in this case, let's say the random letter is O. And then we get to the next position, we want to come up with a random character. And let's say that random character is capital W. So far our password is OW. And then we're going to keep going up to whatever length the user wants. So in this case it's 5. And what we're doing is we're saving our password as we go. So finally, we get to just show the user the password. So we already have it all combined up, and we're just going to show that as, hey, your password is this. Go and log in somewhere. So that is what I think our algorithm could be. And let's actually start writing the code. So let me zoom back out a little bit. Okay, I think that's good. And yeah, let's get to writing. So first, let's get input from the user. So there's actually a function called input. And what we could do is pass in that prompt or pass in that question. And the question is, how long do you want your password to be? And then we're going to have a question mark there. And you all, I always say it's so good to after you write some logic down, run your code to see if everything is working as expected. So you run your code and you're saying, okay, so how long do you want your password to be? And I say I want it to be 10. Okay, so from running my code, I see that, the 10 looks really close to the question mark. So I might just add a space right there. So then I can stop my code, I can run it again, pass in 10. Okay, that looks better. So good thing I ran my code to see what's going on. But okay, so we're getting input from the user. So let's actually save that input that we get. So let's save this into a variable called password length. And variables hold information, they hold data, and in this case, it's going to hold the input that the user gives us. So, bam, you might think you're done with that first line, but there's a little trick to this, and with Python, the results of input is going to be a string. You might be like, what? So let me show you what I mean. So if I print out password length, like so, and then I print out the type of password length. So I would expect the type of this to be an int. However, you're gonna see it's not an int. So how long do you want your password to be? I'm typing 10. So what's gonna happen is it's first gonna print out the password length. So it's going to print out 10, and then it's gonna print out the type of password length. So let's press enter. So it prints out 10, yes. But then we see this, and it has some like crazy syntax, or like, it looks a little weird. However, what's important is this str, and str stands for string. So that's actually not the type that we want. We want it to be an integer, a number. So what we could do is, since we want the results of this to be an int, let's make it an int. So there's actually a function that you can use. And I'm using the word function, but what I want you to understand is that like this int is going to help turn that input into an integer. And whenever I'm explaining something and you're like, I kind of don't get it, y'all, Google is your best friend. Like, as programmers, we use Google all the time. So like all I did was type in that int and then Python. And then you can see there's so many different resources. And there's W3 Schools. I'm a fan of W3 Schools. And you can see, okay, convert the number 3.5 into an integer. The int function converts the specified value into an integer number. So then you can see, oh, okay, that's kind of what we were doing. As I told y'all, the type of it was a string, and now we're turning it to an int. But as you can see, use as many different resources as you need, and that will help you so much in your like programming journey. But that's exactly what we see here. The type is a string, however, we want it to be an int. So now let's run our code again. So we type in the number 10, okay, printed out 10, and then we see the type of it is an int. So that is what we want. And if you forgot to convert this, later on in your code, you might see that something's a little funky and you might remember it, or you might have to look up the documentation for input and see that it returns a string. And I did that in my first Python code along video, so definitely go check out that video if you haven't seen it already. But yeah, so far so good. Let me delete these prints because they serve their purpose. They helped us understand what's going on in our code. And now let's go to step 2. So for each position up to the length of the password, come up with a random letter and add that to the existing password. So you might be like, ooh, I do not even know where to start. So let's start with the for each position. So when I hear that, I definitely think of a for loop, because a for loop can take us through each of those positions. So what we can say is, for position in the range of password length, what we're going to do for now is print out position. Yeah, so there's a lot going on with this line, but this is a for loop. And what we're saying is that for each position, in the range of our password length, so basically password length right now is whatever the user types in. So if they typed in 10, we're saying from 0 to 10, what I want to do is whatever is inside this for loop. And you can tell what's inside the for loop because I indented. I just did a quick little tab and you can see everything that's inside, this for loop is what we're going to do for each position. And if you feel like what I said was kind of confusing, don't be afraid to play around with your code. For example, what you could do is let's print out range of password length. But you see how that's red? It's like undefined name password length. That's because I actually use password length and define it on line 3. So you're like, okay, let me just move that print statement there and let's see. So you can run your code. It's doing some stuff. Okay, so let's say I want my length of my password to be 10. You can see, oh, range 0 to 10 because that's what we decided to print out. And because we printed that out on line 3, and you can see, oh, it's printing out 0, 1, 2, 3. This is good because back when we were looking down here at our algorithm, we need to get the 0, 1, 2. We need to get each position because at position 0, we can give it a random character. At position 1, another random character. So that's good. And then again, if you're like, ooh, Maya, I still don't know what range is doing, All you have to do is do range Python, and then just have fun exploring and looking at different resources. So like W3 schools, it talks more about range function, a sequence of numbers starting at 0, increments by 1, and you're like, oh, it is incrementing by 1, like that makes sense. And you can see you can actually do more with range. It's actually like a pretty cool function, you know, it's a pretty cool like functionality that we get with our code when we use range. But yeah, feel free to explore and learn more about range. So now, every time I run my code, I always like to think like, what do I expect to happen? So for position and range password length, we're gonna print out position. So I expect to print out 0, 1, 2, all the way up to password length. So let's run our code. So it asks us the question again, and let's say I did a big number like 100. Okay, so this is what I expect. The first position is 0. The last position is 99. Now you might be like, 99, why isn't it 100? It's because we start counting at 0. So if you start counting at 0, 0 through 99, the length of that is 100. You know what I'm saying? So for example, even though we started counting the positions at 0, the length of this is still 5. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even though we just decided to start counting at 0. It's like if we decided to start counting at -5, the length of this would still be 5, you know? But yeah, let that marinate a little bit. Okay, so for each position up to the length of the password, come up with a random letter and add that to the existing password. So let's say at the beginning our password is nothing. It's like the empty string. We don't have a password right now. However, we're going to keep updating our password. So password is going to be equal to whatever is in password already plus a random character. And that's what we want to do. So you might be like, okay, Miss, I don't know about that. But the reason why is because we need to figure out how to get the random character. So I have played around with Python before in the past, so I know how to get the random character. However, if you don't, y'all, you're already becoming a programmer because you're learning to like, oh, let me Google it. So you can say something like, how to generate a random character in Python. And then, so Stack Overflow. So I love how that was the first resource that was at the top, just because Stack Overflow is a very popular website that we use as programmers. Saved my career. But yeah, I love Stack Overflow. People can ask a question. You see 166 people have upvoted this. So you're seeing like a lot of people. Look how many times it's been viewed. Like, so you're not the only one that has this question. So good for you for knowing that you need to look it up. So you can see, okay, there's different answers. People can write comments. And then what you can do is like, okay, I like how short this is, 75 upvotes. It looks like it's working. Let me try and add that to my code. And you're gonna find out this is exactly what we need. So let's comment that. All software engineers do is copy and paste. It's kind of like a joke they make. But it looks like we're gonna import random, import string. And you know, as you're copying and pasting, you're kind of thinking like, is that what I could need? So random, you know, that can help us create that random character that we want. String, okay, we're using strings. I could see how that can maybe work. So let's replace random character with that code. And let's kind of talk about what that's doing. So, and I can actually, let's do some print statements. So for example, we do string.ASCII letters. Let's print that out. So then you can see, oh, it prints out A through Z lowercase and then A through Z uppercase. Wow, okay, so that actually does seem handy because we just need a random character. So that part makes sense. Okay, and you might not even understand what ASCII is, y'all. ASCII table, ASCII characters. You can put Python if you want, and you can just find that there's so many helpful resources for that. But you know, from printing it out, you kind of get an idea of what this is. So you might be good on this part. And then random dot choice. So again, you can look up what choice is doing. It looks like REPL.it even helps us out. So choose a random element from a non-empty sequence. Okay, so this is going to help us choose. We get a choice of a random from, you know, this set. So that is making sense. So what you could do too, if you're still kind of confused about what that is, because we just copied it from Stack Overflow, you can actually print password. And in your head, you're like, okay, I'm printing password, but what do I hope or what do I think will happen? So I think in the beginning, our password is going to be empty. And then our password is going to be equal to whatever's in password. So right now it's empty plus random dot choice. So let's say the random choice is you. So I think it's going to be, okay, when we print out password the first time, it's going to be a single character. And then we're going to go to the next position. Okay. So then again, it's going to be whatever's in password. So it's one character. Let's say it's you plus a random choice. Let's say it's UX. And then it's going to print out UX. So I think it's going to keep building out the password as we continue to go through this for loop. So let's pause it. We play it. And then let's say we want it to be 5 long. Okay, nice. So we see we have that capital O, okay, then OA, then OAD, yes. It's 5 length, and you're like, boom, fireworks, so we did it. But what we can do now is, I don't think the user really cares to see what's happening in our code, what's happening in the back end. They kind of just want to see their password. So let's move this print statement, run our code, 5, and nice, we get another random password. And something that's good to know was that's not the same random password we got before. And this is our program. So something else I wanted to point out is I always like to tell y'all there's more than ways to do this. So for example, we did this in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines of code. Yeah, so there's like empty spaces, but it was like 7 lines of code. You can actually do this, I believe, in like 3 lines of code. So for example, this can be turned into 1 line of code, and also your imports as well. I believe your imports can be 1 line. Let's see. I might have said that wrong. Yeah, so that could be 1 line, but there's different ways in which you can make this code smaller. So definitely play around with that. Also, there's a shorthand that we do for this line. So another way, because you see password equals password, that's very repetitive. Instead, you can use this plus equal, kind of like syntax is what they call it, but you know, you can use that symbolism, and that would actually do the same thing that we did before. And to test it out, you see we still get 100 length type password. So those are all the different optimizations that you can do. But yeah, I really hope you like this mini tutorial. You know, let me know if you're enjoying this, because I love making these like little coding tutorials for y'all. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.